Okay, happy 4th of July to everyone. When it comes to the 4th of July, this is who I always think of. It's to honor our military and their humble beginnings. I look to Valley Forge. Valley Forge was a winter encampment of the Continental Army and was under the command of General George Washington during the American Revolution. The Valley Forge encampment lasted 6 months from December 19th, 1777 to June 19th, 1778. It was the third of 8 winter encampments that Washington and the Continental Army endured during the war. 3 months prior to the encampment at Valley Forge in September of 1777, the Second Continental Congress was forced to flee the revolutionary capital, Philadelphia, ahead of an imminent British attack on the city following Washington's defeat in the Battle of Brandywine, a key battle the British Army's Philadelphia campaign. Unable to defend Philadelphia, Washington led his 12,000-man army into winter quarters at Valley Forge, located approximately 18 miles northwest of Philadelphia. At the Valley Forge, the Continental Army struggled to manage a disastrous supply crisis while simultaneously retaining and recognizing their units in effort to mount successful counterattacks against the British. During the encampment at Valley Forge, that's what I want to get to, the encampment. During the encampment at Valley Forge, an estimated 1,700 to 2,000 soldiers died from disease, possibly exacerbated by malnutrition, cold, wet weather. In 1976, in recognition of the enormous historical significance of Valley Forge, in American history, Valley Forge Historical National Park was established and named a National Historic Site, which protects and preserves nearly 3,500 acres of the original Valley Forge encampment site. This park is a popular tourist destination, drawing nearly 2 million visitors each year. I always wanted to go there. Is simply because who is there at the encampment. Okay, people, these are known as the 3%ers. Most people don't know the actual history, and I always wanted to go there to see if they actually told you who was there. While each household a squad of 12 enlisted soldiers, sometimes soldiers' families join them to share that space as well. Throughout the encampment period, Mary Ludwig Hayes, approximately 250 to 400 other women follow their soldier husbands or sweethearts to Valley Forge, sometimes with children in tow. Washington once wrote, the multitude of women in particular, especially those who are pregnant or have children, are clogged upon every movement. Yet women on the whole provided invulnerable, whether the march or at the encampment like Valley Forge. They often earned income either by laundering clothes or by nursing troops, which kept the soldiers cleaner and healthier. In turn, this made the troops appear more professional and disciplined. Lucky Flucker Knox, Catherine Littlefield, Kathy Green, and senior officers' wives joined the Valley Forge at the behest of their husbands. On December 22nd, Martha Washington predicted that her husband would send for her as soon as his army went in winter quarter, and that if he does, I must go. Indeed, she did, traveling a wartime with a group of slaves over poor roads. Reaching her destination in early February, Washington's aide-de-camp Colonel Richard Killer met her at Susquehanna ferry dock to escort her into the encampment. Over the next 4 months, Martha hosted political leaders, military officials, managing domestic staff, as well as confined space of Washington's headquarters. She also organized meals and kept spirits high during rough times at the encampment. Valley Forge had a high percentage. This is what always intrigued me. Valley Forge had a high percentage of racial ethnic diversity. Since Washington's army comprised individuals of each of the 13 states, about 30% of Continental soldiers at Valley Forge did not speak English as their first language. Many soldiers and commanders hailed from German-speaking communities, as well as Pennsylvania-born Brigadier General Peter Muhlenberg. Still others spoke Scottish, Irish Gaelic. I favor the Irish. And a few descended from French-speaking Huguenot and Dutch-speaking communities in New York. Local residents sometimes converged in Welsh. Several senior officers in the Continental Army, originally from France, Prussia, Poland, Ireland, and Hungary. See, the colonies were originally for outcasts. The Pilgrims, let's just say, were political prisoners, prisoners of religious convictions, basically not converting. England was an English-only, Christian-only country, and the preferred Christian sect was Protestant. And it had a profound effect on a lot of these people, especially Ireland. So I asked them how that English-only, Christian-only thing worked out for them. But see, that's why a lot of these people were here. And if you ever read about the history of the rule of law, the Magna Carta, the Great Charter, the Barons' War, then you'll understand the history of the rule of law. And so these people were bringing all these ideals and principles from around the world, and that's what gave you the Declaration of Independence and eventually the U.S. Constitution. So that's not just U.S. history, that's world history. And let's continue. Although Native American and African Americans served in the Continental Army as drovers, wagoners, and laborers, others fought as soldiers, particularly the Rhode Island and Massachusetts. The smallest of the states, Rhode Island had difficulty meeting their quota for white men, spurring Brigadier General James Mitchell Warren to suggest to enlist the slaves for his first Rhode Island regiment. Over a 4-month period in 1778, the Rhode Island General Assembly allowed for their recruitment. In exchange for enlistment, soldiers of the 1st Rhode Island Regiment gained immediate emancipation, and their former owners received financial compensation equal to the slave's value. I was equally pissed when Will Smith made that movie, Emancipation. He missed the point of where it started. He went down the road a bit. Went down the road a piece on the history of emancipation. They bought freedom for 117 slave recruits before a law allowing them to do so was repealed. But these free African American soldiers continued to enlist in the military. These free African Americans continued to enlist in the military. By January 1778, nearly 10% of Washington's effective force consisted of African American troops. Commanders brought servants and enslaved people with them into the encampment, usually black people. Washington's enslaved domestic staff included his manservant, William Lee, as well as cooks Hannah Till and her husband, Isaac William, had married Margaret Thomas, a free black woman who worked as a laundress at Washington's headquarters. Hannah Till's legal owner, Reverend John Minson, led her to Washington, but Hannah secured an arrangement whereby she eventually bought her freedom. By the spring of 1778, Warapanga, Oneida, and Tuscarora warriors were also on the side of the Patriots, with prominent Oneida leader Joseph Lewis Cook of the St. Regis Mohawk. Among them had joined the Americans at Valley Forge. Both served as scouts, keeping an eye out for British raiding parties in the area. In May 1778, they fought under Lafayette at Baron Hill. In the oral history of the Oneida people, a prominent Oneida woman named Polly Cooper bought hundreds of bushels of wheat corn to hungry troops, teaching them how to process it for safe consumption. During the Revolutionary War, most American tribes sided with the British in order to protect their traditional homelands from encroachment of the American settlers. However, several tribes, including the Oneida, sided with the Patriots due to their past and ties with American settlers, such as the Presbyterian minister Samuel Kirkland, the Seven Nations of Canada, and the Iroquois at what would be the Six Nations Reserve, who were mostly immigrants from New York, who were brought on the brink of war by the Anglo-American conflict. It's an interesting piece of history, but regardless, I seen President Trump, say he wanted to build a monument, to honor the troops. I've never been here, but is there a monument, honoring all these people? They gave credence to the writing of the Declaration of Independence, and the fruits of that labor, the Constitution. But if you read further in history, before the Constitution was written, the offer of emancipation was withdrawn, and once enslaved became enslaved again. Even freedmen became slaves. Native Americans still had their lands encroached upon. And the immigrants that made this country helped make this country. Replaced the monarchy with a political system. And just different names, but still above the law. And a nation of laws, with the rule of law as king. No one is above the law. Qualified immunity cannot exist, should not exist. Legally speaking, of course. It's contrary to the rule of law. Qualified immunity is contrary to the rule of law, and it was established, and I think it was in '56 in a Pearson versus Ray case, and established a good faith measure, is what judges still go on these days, that will say, hey, well, they thought they were enforcing the law, so it's not a law, and our lawmakers even went out of their way to make these mistakes into laws. Unnecessary laws under the color of law. So just think about it. Personally, I'd like to see a monument. I didn't learn this in school. When I spoke about it, I was silenced. I asked about this in 7th grade. We weren't even scheduled for the Constitution test till the following year, and I already read the Constitution and Declaration of Independence a couple years before. Did you know who the 3%ers were? Actually were? I'm not talking about wives' tales. Yarns told, passed down from generation to generation. They didn't even know. The people that told me they were descendants of the 3%ers didn't even know the actual history of Valley Forge. So let me know what you think in the comments. All right. God bless.